Hello, everyone. My name is 12 Gauge, and this is my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. If you're looking for the podcast to keep your attention, to keep the exciting topics coming, you've come to the right place. Hit the like, share, and subscribe button. Let's dive in. Good evening, everybody. My name is 12 Gauge. Welcome to my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. If you're new to the channel, thank you so much for stopping by and saying hello. If you've been to the channel before, you know the concept, you know the type of podcast you'll receive from the channel, which is always fresh, organized, and ready to go. Hopefully, I have a guest that's coming on here in a little bit, and we're going to have just a friendly conversation about anything and everything. What's going on in the world today? What is actually transpiring before our eyes? Whether it be true crime, whether it be just daily living, whether it be our own lives as they correspond in this nice, lovely world we have. Somebody was talking about shadow, shadow some things, and I was thinking, what is that? But I guess that's where nobody can see your stuff, especially while you're live. So I was thinking shadow banning, that's what they called it. Which is I think is weird because, honestly, whenever I'd come on, people would instantly come into the channel and start chatting. They'd come into the channel and start listening. But I know that I have my notifications on for my channel, and I didn't get a notification. So who knows? Who knows what's going on with YouTube, or the fact that I'm not monetized, so I don't get the stuff out there as quick as I used to whenever I was monetized. So tonight, as you all know, we have a lot of stuff going on in the world. Israel and the US have been bombing Iran for a little bit now, and there's a lot of things that are going on. Whether you agree with it or whether you disagree with it, it's happening regardless. You know what I mean? So, um, obviously they've killed Ayatollah, who's been in power since 1989, I believe. And so he's been in there for a long time, a long while. So him being in power has created a lot of animosity with a lot of countries due to the fact that they sponsor terrorists. They sponsor Hamas, which in turn go and do what they do to create fear and all the destruction in the world, you know? Um, I did a live earlier where I was talking about defamation of character. If you haven't seen that, then I don't know what you're waiting for. I don't know what you're waiting for. Let me contact this person. I told them I was going live, so it doesn't matter anyway. There's nobody watching as far as I can tell. Which, it's kind of like when I started my channel. Um, I used to get on here and I'd think to myself, why ever have a chat? Why ever have the chat flowing at a certain speed, that would really give an influx. And I thought to myself, well, if I do, why be able to not only correspond with the chat, but also be discussing the situation that I'm trying to discuss in the live stream, because believe it or not, when you do have a chat and it's nonstop, it's difficult to really pay attention to what the chat is saying. You only catch bits and glimpses of it. And you really have to be quick on your feet to really understand what the chat is talking about, or if they're actually talking about something that you're talking about in a live stream. Um, one thing about having a channel and trying to give the latest insight on the things that are out there in the world is you have to really pick and choose your audience, like what is the captive audience at that point? Is there a captive audience for true crime? Is there a captive audience um, for food? Is there a captive audience for all kinds of different things? I mean, you have to be very mindful. So let me play a little portion while I'm still waiting for my guest, because I think this is.
We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated. We're going to annihilate their Navy. We're going to ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world.
Let's bring in Fox News senior strategic analyst, retired General Jack Keane. General, thanks for being here. First of all, your take on the operation so far, what you've heard, what you know about it.
Yeah, well, certainly I think it's exceeding expectations for sure. A couple of things. Obviously, this operation was planned to begin at night, but given the opportunity that these leaders were meeting, the Israelis contacted the Americans and said, we have a real opportunity here, even though it's Shabbat Saturday. Normally, they don't do things like this on a Saturday. It was Ramadan. We really have an opportunity to achieve something they've wanted all along, which is the degree of tactical surprise. And they were able to achieve that. And what a way to begin an operation, by taking down the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, and also
And if you haven't heard, they took him out. They took him out just like they did like they took out that leader when they went in, took him out. Our military doesn't mess around. It really has some high intelligence capacity, and they have the capacity to be one of the best in the world. So, I mean, to sit there and really think that we don't have the capability to do certain things is just in denial and naiveness.
of his cohorts. Listen, the Israelis have started something here that's new to warfare. Warfare is fundamentally a test of wills, and you're using force to break your opponent's will. And the sooner you can do it, the better you do it, the better it is. And this is the third time they've done this. They did it with Hezbollah, decapitating their leaders. Hezbollah never recovered from that. Even though they have thousands of missiles, they never fired one of them in support of Iran during Israel's 12-day war against the Iranians. When I asked the general, why haven't they used those missiles? An Israeli general, he said, sir, we have broken their will. And that's the
Because, you know, like what they did a year ago when they bombed the areas that were supposedly manufacturing nuclear weapons is, you know, we crippled that area, but they had started to remanufacture these weapons. They started to repair what we destroyed. And, you know, I'm not making this political, so don't think so, because I'm not a political minded person, but think about when you hear the safety of our country, these missile strikes are strategic. They're missile strikes, not just killing random people or just killing innocent people. They're strategic in nature.
reality. And here we're repeating it again. During the 12-day war, remember, they took down the senior military leaders and the nuclear scientists. An Israeli debriefer indicated to me that impacted 60% of Iran's capability to retaliate against Israel during that 12-day war, decapitating the leadership and the command and control, the disruption that something like that has caused. And here we are seeing this again, and executed so brilliantly in what it's achieving. And they're going to take advantage of that and work on the entire infrastructure that sustains the regime, the political infrastructure, the legislature, the national.
I mean, if you're you're destroying these targets and you don't think we know where those targets are, where all this stuff is being stored, where, you know, they're manufacturing all this stuff, you're mildly confused because, I mean, these are being carried out by drones, not even fighters, not even fighters are being used. They're using what says U.S. Tomahawks, HIMARS, and drones are used to strike
Security
on
Council, other agencies, and then the security and military infrastructure that sustains this regime. They're going to take it apart systematically and deliberately, plus the missiles, the Navy bases, etc., to decapitate their hardware and their military capability, to include the defense industrial base.
I mean, so if you take out these military bases, you take out their ability to fight back with their navy or with their air force. I mean, you pretty much cripple a country, you know what I mean? And you know what the sad part is? I believe that all this is being the basis of everything is oil. I meant to talk about Venezuela a while ago. That's what I meant to say, or Puerto Rico, one of those. I think it was Venezuela where we went in and killed or captured the dictator there. And pretty much we're utilizing their oil at this point. Are we doing the same thing with Iran? Are we picking people to use their resources so we don't have to use our own?
The last 2 to 3 weeks, but if this regime capitulates, in a sense, gives up, it could happen a lot sooner. But this is a very comprehensive operation, brilliantly executed so far.
I've been told by a couple of senior officials there are various off ramps depending on what they see conditions on the ground. I want to put up this map of Iran's retaliatory strikes so far. Not surprising that obviously Israel, a major target here with many missiles, that a lot of them have been taken out by the defenses. But what's surprising.
Now look at this map. You know, it says these are the areas, obviously, where they've been hitting, you know, in Iran. And in the Arabian Sea, I've been listening that they have a lot of Navy protecting this, and they've been, excuse me, they've been shooting off missiles at our carriers over there. So, I mean, we can't have that happen.
Surprising, I think, is some of the civilian targets in the Gulf Arab neighbors. And we'll put up some video of some of these strikes. But the Ministry of Defense from the UAE out of Abu Dhabi announced that since the onset of this attack, the Air Force and Air Defense Forces in UAE have engaged and destroyed 137 ballistic missiles, 209 drones shot towards UAE. A few of them hit civilian targets. There was the hotel and the Fairmont Hotel, the Palm, and others. Bahrain also another attack there. And what do you think is the strategy there, General? It seems like it has stiffened the spine of those.
I mean, last week we were talking about the cartel damage down in Mexico, how the cartel are burning everything. Now this week we're talking about airstrikes. I mean, it seems like the whole world is slowly burning a little at a time, and it's just happening the way, if you are a believer, you understand what's going on, but if you're not, I suggest that you start reading certain things to educate yourself.
Gulf Arab allies, and they're actually getting the GCC together to say, almost if you attack one of us, you're taught to attack all of us, almost like a NATO charter.
Yeah, I mean, I think their motivation there was to threaten this attack, and now obviously they're following through it. Remember, they didn't want the Arab states supporting this attack in any way, shape, or form. And last time, some of them provided fighter jets, and many of them provided overflights, etc., of their territory. They didn't want any of that to be done. But the reality is those states, many of them have our defensive systems that they're using. And you're absolutely right.
I mean, can you imagine living and having all this stuff go around you, like bombs going off, building blowing to smithereens, all these things that we over here in America have been protected from for multitudes of decades. These people that live in this Eastern culture, the Middle Eastern culture, I'm not saying that they're used to it, but they understand what it's like to actually have that happen. Unlike us, like if we were in a city and all of a sudden we just started seeing buildings and rockets and missiles and stuff coming from the air, and all this stuff just started catching on fire. A lot of us have never seen that in our lifetime. That would be traumatic.
Publicly, they were against any operation taking place against the Iranians. Why? Because they were trying to forestall an attack. Privately, they were all in. And I've always been frustrated by that, to be frank. I mean, I think they should speak the truth and stand up for their principles of what's going on here. Yeah. Publicly and privately say the same thing. But yes, you put your finger on.
I mean, look at that. We were looking at similar kind of images last week with the cartel stuff that we were talking about. We're looking at smoke rising in the air, bombings, cars on fire, all this stuff. And it's sad to believe that there are people that actually live in these cities that have to endure this kind of madness because the government just do not seem to care.
Something that's critical here. They are coming together. And believe me, if Iran gets off the board as the evil influence they've been in this region, those Abraham Accords are likely going to kick back in with Saudi leading the pack on this as one of the enduring outcomes of what's in front of us.
I mean, it could change the region dramatically. Obviously, we're in the very early stages of this, and a lot can happen. General, just talk for a second about the decision-making here by President Trump and what that took in the face of naysayers in his own party and other places, and what it potentially means for other countries like China and Russia and what it signals to the rest of the world.
Yes, well, I think there's been a lot of talk about what options and the rest of it, but the truth is there's only been one major plan, and that is the comprehensive plan that we're seeing unfolded with the Israelis and the Americans, who are the two most proven militaries in the world, actually working together in a common objective here. So
I mean, think about the long-term effects of this, really the long-term effects. Hey, Walt, um, the long-term effects of this is going to demonstrate a lot in the world regarding the prices of goods, oil production. All this stuff is going to be impacted by all this. And people say, well, that's happening over there. That has nothing to do with us. I used to be like that when I was younger. I'd hear about, when I was graduating high school, Desert Storm was kicking off. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to get drafted in Desert Storm. Never was, thank God. But you think, well, that's a half a world away. What does that have to do with me? Well, unfortunately, we have a lot of individuals that are loyal to this nation that are living amongst us. And all it takes is these cells to rise up together and start doing things over here. You know what I mean? Kind of like what we were talking about last week with the cartel stuff. And I'm not making this political. I'm not making it political at all. I'm just making it where it is real to the people that don't believe that this could happen over here. Because anything can happen at any time. Pearl Harbor, we weren't prepared for Pearl Harbor to get bombed. We thought there's no way that we're going to get pulled into this war. And what happened? We got bombed. We got a lot of our aircraft taken out, a lot of our aircraft carriers taken out because we didn't want to be a part of that war. And we got pulled into it by the Japanese.
that is one thing. The other thing is certainly people have been trying to talk the president out of doing this, worried about the day after, the ambiguity that surrounds that, the chaos in Iran as a result of it, the chaos in the region, the war will be expanded. The president looked at all of those negative things, just looking at the number of rockets and missiles they have. And if that's all you're going to look at, we're likely going to have a number of casualties as a result of it. We may still have some, to be sure. And you can come up with sort of a negative answer. He listened to all of that. But at the end of the day, I think his motivation was pretty simple. He saw that the regime was weak. But what was the regime doing? Recovering their missiles as rapidly as possible. They made a decision to recover their nuclear program, but they hadn't put it into play consequentially. They were providing financial and material support to the proxies so the proxies can get back on the path to attacking Israel again. In other words, he looked at Iran and said, the 12-day war, they learned nothing from that experience. They're going to keep doing this, and I'm not going to extend them a lifeline. So stop them from doing bad things and what the regime was doing. And that's what he's done with Syria and chemical weapons. That's what he did with Qasem Soleimani. And that is what he's done with Venezuela. He stopped something bad from happening.
Well, right. Think about Iraq. I mean, think about how they used to do things, how Afghanistan, all those countries, there for the longest time, they were part of the axis of evil that President Bush claimed that they were. So think about, there's a lot of people that aren't on board with this. There's a lot of people that don't believe that this should be happening, which I understand. Just like everything else in life, we have pro and against, But you have to ask yourself, over the long term, is this going to help our country, or is this just a publicity stunt? Is this just something to increase Trump's numbers, to increase his favoritism amongst the U.S. people, which I don't believe that's what it is at all.
The second thing, which is even more meaningful, he's setting the conditions for the regime to collapse. and to move finally towards probably people that are less ideologue than what they are currently, and maybe somebody we can work with, and put them on a process where eventually the Iranian people get back in control of their country. It is an incredible decision.
See, here's this right here says it all. It says Trump didn't start. It says President Trump didn't start a war with Iran. He's ending a 47-year war with Iran. This is what I voted for. So think about that. I mean, without making political, think about how long this has been going on. How long? From, you know, them holding the hostages for 440 something days back in the 80s, bombing USS Cole, all those things that happened. And for so long, it's like you give these people a pass, and instead of learning by diplomacy, they don't learn by diplomacy. They learn like what President Trump is doing, he did last year, and what he's doing right now.
It's going to define his presidency, and it's going to define his legacy. Why? Because you said it, Brett. This is going to open the door to stability and peace in the region that none of us could have seen, and none of the previous 7 presidents were ever willing to confront Iran in any consequential manner whatsoever that put their survival at risk. And this president has made that decision, and we're knocking on the doorstep of an enduring peace in the region as a result of it.
Well, I hope it is, as you project.
I mean, because he did make a statement. He said, to the people of Iran, y'all wanted a difference in your country. Take the opportunity to use that now to overcome what it is that you've been unable to do all these years, all these decades. So that's interesting to me that, the dictator is dead. He's gone. What's his name? Ayatollah Khamenei. He's gone. He's dead. So what are the Iranian people going to do? They have a choice. They have a choice to either rebuild and try to be the old regime, knowing that pretty much we're not going to put up with it. Or are they going to try to do what they've wanted to do all this time, but were unable to do it because of the regime that they had in power, which was to build diplomacy within their country? Only time will tell. Only time will tell. What do y'all think about this? Because this is huge news. This is huge. This is huge. It's not like, kind of like last week when I was talking about the cartel stuff. Somebody told me after that live, somebody told me, well, it sounded like you were dramatizing the cartel capabilities and all this and that and the other. And I was like, how was I dramatizing something that darn well is capable of happening at any time? We have so many people in this country that have alliances to other countries. They're just here using our resources because they have no resources of their own in their countries. Just because they're here doesn't mean that they care about America. There's a lot of people brandishing their country's flags while wishing death upon Americans. I don't know how you feel about that. And once again, I'm not making this political because it's not political. It's just everyday thought. It's like we walk amongst people that hate America. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? hopefully when you're watching this on replay or you stop in to watch, you give a little bit of insight on your thoughts on that, because it is to be discussed upon. What do you feel about individuals that hate America? Are we really opening up the possibility for terrorist cells to come out and start bombing into cities? Or do you believe that that's over exaggerated? So tell me what you think. Tell me what you think. Do you believe that it's over exaggerated? I don't. I don't think it's over exaggerated at all. I believe that, as a country, we should be united. We should be more united toward a common goal, which is not division. There's division on YouTube, there's division on TikTok, there's division everywhere you go. And it's terrible. It's terrible that we have come as a nation to this point of reference regarding our lives. Division, this isn't the United States of division or the division states of America, you know. This is the US, the United States of America, united, meaning that we all believe a certain way. And many people have died for that freedom and that cause. And that's why people get so angry, I guess, whenever we have individuals that, are burning the flag or, talking bad about our government or talking bad about the people in uniform who have served our country. I believe that's why there's such hostility and such division in that aspect, because if you served in the military, you instantly were doing something that not everybody does. Not everybody is patriotic enough to serve and possibly die for our country. That's a huge, huge responsibility. But a lot of people aren't willing to do that. And you got to ask yourself, what would cause somebody to not love their country enough to go in and die for their country? There's a lot of people that wouldn't die for their family. There's a lot of selfish individuals in this world. They claim that they're unified, but they're really not. They're self-serving and very selfish. I have a lot of individuals um, that have served in the military, and I'm very thankful for their service, because where would our country be if people didn't sign up and believe in freedom and diplomacy and all the things we believe as Americans? Where would our country be military wise if people still didn't believe that it was worth fighting for? Anybody watching ever serve in the military? We have any service members watching? Let me put this in the backdrop. Any of y'all former military people? Because if you are, thank you for your service. Thank you for everything that you've ever done for our country. Because it goes without saying, without you, who knows where our country would be at this point? Because there's been some some weak leaders. And what happens when we have weakness in leadership is other countries see it and they pounce on it. I just made that backdrop, so hope y'all like it. It's pretty cool, I think. Multi-talented. It seems like, people actually like the graphics because I'm seeing a lot more replicas of the thumbnails that I have been using for a while now, which is pretty cool because I'm not the creator and I'm not the owner, so I'm glad that other people are kind of putting it across YouTube because it's interesting to see. But I want to talk about not only the war that's going on right now. I want to talk about life in general, like life as we know it. Like I want to ask you some questions because last night during my podcast with Carla, there was a lot of things brought up, and it was a very interesting podcast. Had a lot of valuable information. Carla was a great guest, very knowledgeable in what she does and what she knows. But I got to thinking, what if you were listening to that podcast and you still walked away not understanding the toxicity of being in a relationship, not only with somebody of a significant other value, but just being in a relationship with a human being? What would it be? What would it take for you to actually walk away? What would it take for you to walk away? To get to that point where you say, this is not healthy. I need to do something for my mental health because it's suffering. What would it take you? What point would it take for you to actually say, I'm going to invest in myself for once? I'm tired of being the giver all the time. Because to be fair with you guys, I'm kind of being transparent tonight. To be fair with you guys, I am at that point. Not with a significant other, just with life in general. Because sometimes we get to that point in life where we feel like no matter how hard we try, it just isn't enough. No matter what we do, it's never enough. It's not right. It's not good enough. So think about that a minute. If you're at that point in life and you feel like you're older, something happened when you shift into middle age, some call it middle age crisis, but think about that a minute. Maybe you've lost all interest in what used to give you pleasure. A lot of people get pleasure by monetary value, um, material things. What if those don't give it to you anymore? What if it's not monetary value? It's not vacations. It's not movies. It's not playing the guitar. It's not doing all these things. What if you really struggle because life all of a sudden really becomes real for you? That's a good statement. Men kind of go through menopause. That could be true. I don't doubt that one bit. But honestly, I was thinking about this and I talked to a lot of people about this because, in reality, I've reached a point, I guess, that I've seen so much in this world that not only you're desynthesized from it all, like this right here, you see this backdrop and you're thinking, oh, that's not that bad. But think about those images we saw a while ago. It is really that bad. But many of us are so used to violence, so used to trauma that we don't really think of it as something that's traumatic. We are reliving a traumatic event over and over and over in our lives, and most of the time we're okay with that. I myself, I'm through. I'm through with fighting with people. I'm through fighting for causes that honestly are not gonna amount to a hell of beans. And maybe that's why my channel isn't overflowing with people wanting to listen to what I gotta say, because I'm not about fighting. I'm not about the fight. I don't give a shit about the Idaho Ford Koberger bullshit. I don't care whether you think he's innocent, whether you think he's guilty. I don't care if you still have questions. Answer those questions for yourself. Quit asking me to answer them for you and then get mad when we don't think alike. You know what I'm saying? I've had multitudes of people in and out of my chats that all they wanted to do is argue and fight, try to prove their point, slander the survivors, all that stuff. After a while, you get tired of the fight. Not necessarily get depressed, more like anxiety, anxiety for the future. Like I said, depression's about the past, anxiety's about the future. Like right now, as we're looking at this on the screen, this is our future. And I don't know about you and your level of importance, but this is more important than any Koberger bullshit that's being spread around right now at the moment. This is more important than the WSU lawsuit. This is more important than the Nancy Guthrie case in my eyes. This is more important because it has ramifications that affect everyone. You might not know about Iran, you might not care about Iran, might not care about what's going on over there. But you know what? It's going to affect you one way or the other. It might affect you at the pumps, might affect you at the grocery store even more. It might affect you all the way around, but we're always looking to have someone to blame. Well, I'll just blame President Trump. It's his fault. He's the worst president ever. He lied and he didn't fulfill what he said he was going to do. You know what I mean? However you feel about him, that's really neither here nor there. But we have to really ask those hard questions for ourselves. Walt says I'm a little disappointed that this happened today. I wish I could have you on panel to discuss that. I really do. Because I'd like to know what disappointed you, what part, you know? Because I didn't learn about it until probably 2:30 in the afternoon. And it'd been something that's going on all day long, you know what I mean? But that's how disengaged I've been in the world lately. I used to be all about YouTube. I used to like want to listen to every little podcast, every little news story, everything. But you know what? Over time, I have just gotten to the point where it's almost living a life without living a life. You know what I mean? It's like, to me, watching all this stuff transpire, it's almost like somebody showing you the future and not giving you a choice whether you live your own life a certain way. You know what I mean? Like, there's people saying that this is going to start World War III. There's people saying that, you know, all this and that and the other. Well, if that's true, what kind of choice does that really leave you? Because then you're going to start worrying about what if, what if, what if. Walt said, I just hate meddling in other countries. We seem to always have our nose in every other country's business. It wears you down. Of course it does. Of course it does. Of course it does. I don't know if it's the fact that they're an easy target, just like that guy said in that broadcast, because they are pretty much crippled. They haven't recovered from last year's strikes. You know, is it just the finishing touches? Is this, I know it's biblical, but I don't want to get biblical on here tonight. But just the finishing touches. because you do understand that there eventually will be peace. And that's when it really gets scary. We all want peace, but when it's truly peaceful, that's when it gets scary. I mean, to me, it's just sad. Excuse me, I don't know why I'm yawning. Full moon's up ahead, by the way. I just want to throw that out there. But to me, it's always seemed like we've been at war with somebody, or somebody's always been trying to push our buttons, or how they've been at war over there since the beginning of time. They've never lived in peace. It's never been peaceful over there. It's never been peaceful in South America. But for some reason, we bury our heads in the sand and don't really care about it because it's not happening here. I'm not a fearmonger person. I'm not one of those that always tells people, hey, this is going to happen, or you should be scared of this happening. I'm just a realist, I guess. Kind of like with the defamation live that I did earlier. I mentioned that one live of mine, or maybe 2 or 3, and I've said, defamation suits are coming. And of course they were, and that lady got $10 million out of it. Yeah, 40 plus years. I believe that this is going to set a preference, though. Either it's going to show the world that we're really not as weak as they think we are. Because during the last 4 years, the world took us as a joke. They looked at our president as a joke. They looked at our country as a joke. They didn't have any fearful mindset that, oh, the US could do this. Because we really didn't do anything. People were pushing us around for once. But it's kind of like arguing rock and roll music. Politics is the same thing. You're never going to reach a level of compromise, because we all have our beliefs. That's why I'm trying not to be political tonight. I'm just trying to be realist, and talking about real life stuff. Because I don't know where you are regarding your journey in life. I don't know if you're happy with your choices you've made in life. I don't know if you're okay with your financial aspect in life. I don't know if you're okay with the forgiveness that you've gotten from other people or you've given other people. But, possibly you might focus on that a little bit. I agree with that, and I always thought that too, Walt. But then I thought, what's going to happen is these young guys are going to get into office. They're going to try to make a change, and then they're going to get old and revert back to what used to work. Because it seems like we've had some young people try to push for change. Hold on a second. I got to get something to drink. I'll be right back. Let me leave you with some music for some interlude. I'll be right back.
Wake up to a war before my feet hit the floor. Mind full of noise, heart tired of keeping score. Bills on the table, hope under the bed. I shake hands with fear, every word that I said. Life throwing punches I never could block. Clock keeps ticking, but I'm frozen in shock. Smiles.
All right, thank you for holding on right quick. You know, sometimes doing these podcasts, your throat gets really dry because you know, you're talking. But you know, you're making some good thoughts there, Walt. You really are. There's nothing wrong with fresh blood. We need, you know, new visions. But it seems like the more new visionaries we get, the less accountability we have towards that new vision. You know what I mean? It's kind of like with our kids. You know, they took paddling out of school. They took getting licks and all this other stuff. They replaced it with timeout. They replaced it with in-school suspension. They replaced it with alternative schools. Has that really helped? Has that really deterred truancy? You know, has that really changed a lot in society? Not putting a paddle to the rear. And you know what? I mean, I could have a whole live over um, the indiscrepancies of raising kids today, and it would make a lot of people mad. Probably there would be some people that probably would agree, but I believe, based on what I see, and the children that are hurting, the juveniles that are hurting that I cross paths with, the parents are the problem. And you want to say, well, how can you blame the parent, 12? How can you blame the parents for what the kid choose to do? Well, once again, the kid didn't raise themselves. If they did, then that there is the problem. You know, a lot of times you see when that child is able to walk or partially talk, most of the time these parents have planted that child in front of the TV, or they give them the cell phone, and that's the babysitter. So the kid grows up believing this is a belief system. They grow up believing that they are actually smarter than they really are. It's kind of like watching a movie 100 times. You're going to be able to memorize what the favorite parts of the movie are, but if somebody asks you a logical question about a real life scenario from that movie, they're unable to tell you anything about it. You know, you cannot shortcut education. You know, there's a lot of people that don't do research on these platforms. They use ChatGPT to write their scripts for them, to write their shows for them. And then at the same time, they talk about actually doing research. How are you doing research? By typing something in vaguely and letting a search engine fill in the blanks for you. And then swear up and down that that information is 100% legit, you know? Especially when you've heard and you've seen otherwise, you know it's not legit, but you still hold on to your conviction. That's part of the problem too. I don't know how it is in other states, but here in Texas, we have a test called the STAR test. And it seems like you must pass this test before you graduate. So these teachers spend their whole existence with these students focusing on this test. Not really teaching like they used to back in the day. Remember back in the day, you actually had books that you opened, you read out of, you took notes out of, things like that. That doesn't happen anymore. Now college is for the elites, and that's also terrible. All those rich kids expect to be CEOs out of college. You're right. That is a very tragic situation. Hell, kids expect never to have a job step into the job force and be manager right off the bat. You know, if you start an employee at $10 an hour, a lot of kids don't want to work. They want to make $25, $30 an hour right off the bat, never worked a day in their life. They have no clue how to do most of the things needed in order to be a good employee, but they want to start at the top instead of working their way up. And that is tragic as well. I mean, granted, we still have kids that are willing to work from the bottom all the way to the top. But in my own life, and I can only speak for myself, you know, sometimes starting at the bottom and spending so much time working your way up, by the time you get to a level of success, you're exhausted. You're exhausted. Like being a therapist, I've fought people for 23, 24 years. I've fought my bosses. I've fought clients. I've fought parole officers. I've fought probation officers. I've fought institutions. I've fought all kinds of people, either as an advocate for a certain person or as an advocate for them to get more help. Either way, a fight is a fight. And to always have somebody as an opponent on the other side, it wears you down. Where you get to where I'm at today, like I said earlier, tired of fighting. I don't know about you or your life, but I'm tired of fighting. You get tired of fighting, man. You get tired of fighting. And you ask yourself, what am I fighting for? You know, kind of that song. That's the song. What am I fighting for? You know, whatever. Or what are we fighting for? Blah blah blah. Anyways, but you ask yourself that question, what am I fighting for? What am I fighting so hard for? Do you just give up? Most of the time, no, because you're not built that way. Giving up is never an option. So what do? You just regroup and go at it again? Unfortunately, for a lot of us, that's what we have to do day in and day out. We have to regroup. We have to give ourselves that pep talk, that motivational speech, whatever it takes to get you through the day. But is that fair? That is the question I'm asking right now. Is that fair? No one said life was fair, but at one point in time, you have to ask yourself these hard questions. Is that fair for you to be putting in so much, receiving so little? Knowledge is power, okay? I don't regret going back to school, getting my bachelor's, blah, 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 all that crap. The fighting is what I'm tired of. And I don't know if any of you that are watching are tired of fighting too. Maybe you work at a job where you feel like all you do is fight. You fight everyone, not physically, emotionally and mentally. You fight everyone all day long. You fight against the system because there's somebody shortcutting it. You fight against the system because somebody's trying to tell you what to do it the wrong way. You're fighting this, you're fighting that. At what point is it okay to just say, take a breath? Or at what point is it okay to just say, screw this, I'm out? Because I don't know if a lot of you can honestly say that. Screw this, I'm out. If you could, you probably do it. If you're impulsive, you probably do it. But you have to ask yourself, what am I fighting for? What's the fight really about? Have I reached the goals where I've set in my life? Am I okay with my position in life? Because if you look at some people's lives, it is just a reenactment on a daily basis. They never get anywhere. It's just a continuum of problems. It's a continuum of questions. They never really get anywhere. They're just asking permission not to give up. Some people, no, don't give up. You're doing wonderful, Henry. Keep it up. It's just a bad day, not a bad life. You know, shit like that. But at what point can you really be honest with somebody and say, it's okay. It's okay if you don't want to do this anymore. Do that proverbial thing that makes you happy. You know, they always used to say, if you love what you do for a job or employment, you'll never work a day in your life. How true is that statement, honestly? Because even millionaires, I know people that are millionaires, they're still unhappy. There's always something missing from their lives. And I know all this ties into what I started talking about Iran at the very beginning, because you know what? A lot of things are caused because of unhappiness, because of the seeking of power and control, in which a lot of us don't have in our lives. You might think you're controlling over other people. You might think that you're the boss. You might think that you're the most knowledgeable or that people actually hold you in high regard. Keep thinking that. If it makes you go on one more day, keep thinking it. In reality, one day, you're going to wake up, the bubble's going to pop, and you're actually going to realize you weren't that important to people. You weren't. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer tonight because I'm not being down. I'm not being negative. I'm just speaking truth, you know? I really am. Yeah, hold on for one more day. Isn't that what they tell us? Hold on. Hold on for one more day. Well, I don't know about you, but there's times when I don't want to hold on for one more day. I want the change to happen today. You know, last night we were talking about therapy. We were talking about go see somebody and talk to somebody and have support. Well, that's all good and dandy. Been there, done that. You know? What do you do when you're okay, but the world in which you live is still dysfunctional? There's a question for you. What do you do? How do you go on? How do you make sure that you're okay? While you're getting help, you're getting better, you go back to an environment that's still toxic, guess what? Just a matter of time before you yourself become toxic again. We don't change that quickly. We have people that swear change up and down, quick, whatever. On average, it takes 14 days to break a habit, 21 days for it to formulate into automatic response. So think about the people that swear up and down that they changed, that they learned their lesson. Don't leave me. I learned my lesson. I understand what caused the problem. Don't leave me. Please don't leave me. But all they're doing is just knee jerk reacting, you know? Because once you get what you want, you forget that you even promised to change, you know? It's a tricky game, it's a tricky life. That's why I like to talk about it. Because a lot of people think that just because they vow to change, to be honest, most people don't know what to change or when to change or how to change. Because most of the time they don't believe they need to change anything. Their perception is the problem is you. There's only so much that you can fix, too. I'm a 54-year-old man. I don't know how old you are, but think about where you are in life. Can you really teach an old dog new tricks? You know, we're all adaptable. We're all able to adapt to change. But how long does it stick before you say, F this, I'm going back to what works, what I'm used to, what I'm comfortable with? Because that's the operative word, comfort. If it's a little bit uncomfortable, most people don't want to do it very long. It's about comfort. If my comfort is challenged, I don't want to do it very long because it's uncomfortable and I don't know if I'll succeed. But if I'm comfortable, I know exactly what to expect. I know exactly how long this is going to last till I fuck it up. Excuse my language, but that's the honest truth. You know? That's why therapy a lot of times doesn't really work for people because they don't want to be honest. They don't want to get to the deep core value of what it is that is the problem. And most of the time, as ugly as it is, all you got to do is look in the mirror. You'll see exactly what the problem is. The problem exists in between your ears. Sure, it's easy to blame other people. It's easy to blame the world. It's easy to blame your parents. Can you imagine me being 54 years old still blaming my parents about how I was raised? I had a conversation with my father today about my upbringings, and I said, you know, I was honest with him in some areas that I've never been honest with him ever. And we realized, people do the best they can with what they got. At 5 years old, how can I still be holding on to shit that happened 51 years ago? That's insane, you'd think, but there's a lot of people that still get drunk, still get high, still cause catastrophe in their lives over issues that happened decades ago because they're unwilling to let them go. Because it's almost like a reoccurring nightmare. It keeps coming and keep coming and keep coming. And they're uncertain how to ever loosen their grip to that nightmare. Has that ever happened to anybody that's watching? Has that ever happened to anybody that's watching on replay? Have you been to that point where you just say, at what point can I start living normal like quote unquote everybody else is? Or how come my life's always a little bit worse than everybody else's? What do you think, Walt? You think I'm getting too deep right now, or you think I'm asking some good questions? Because you're the only one in chat and you're the only voice that I can. See. I appreciate you being here, by the way. And if you notice, you still have a wrench. There's a lot of people who still have a wrench that never come in here anymore. But the reason I like to talk the way I'm talking is because it elicits a little bit of response. In the therapy world, we call that creating ambivalence, meaning that if you create a little bit of discomfort, even if people don't want to think about it, they're still going to think about it. Rather than placating them and agreeing with everything um, that they say, um, that doesn't elicit nothing but ass kissing or whatever. Walt says you seem like a control theory guy. I think we have to be that way in order to survive. I've been listening and we're busy. Oh, hi, PKC. You still have a wrench too. That's awesome. I tell you, there's a lot more people that have a wrench that don't come in here anymore. I really don't have any hard feeling toward anybody either. I really don't. Like I said, I'm done with fighting, and that's part of the reason that I handle things the way I do most of the time is, you know what? You want to say one thing, you want to talk a certain way. Most people look for a fight, they look for a disagreement because it creates drama. I don't know about you guys that are in the chat. I'm 54. I don't know how you are, how old you are, but you don't have to tell me. But think about how long you've wanted to live a life of calmness, you know, to live a life where there's not a lot of drama. Because I don't know about you guys, but when people start arguing, when they start fighting and all this and that, I mean, I only take so much and then I come back at it if I'm invested in the fight. Most of the time, I'm just like, that has nothing to do with me.
Guess who?
Like I said, people text me live. I guess my guest isn't coming tonight. She had an emergency. Yeah, at some point we gotta live in the moment, knowing that you're out on an island is stressful. Hey, if we can't talk about real life, what can we talk about? It's what a podcast is all about, right? Discussing certain things that nobody wants to really talk about. That's why I enjoy the podcast format a lot better than the other stuff, you know? That other stuff got old quick and it was boring. I agree with some of the people. It was boring. Because who wants to sit there and watch a video with somebody else just talking about it? That is boring. Or who wants to rehash the same story every night, expecting the same amount of enthusiasm to react to the chat? That is boring. You know, I enjoy what I'm doing now. There's nothing stressful about it as far as this podcast. I'm glad I rebranded it and changed it because that other way was just the. Oh, I was gonna have a warning label up here tonight, but something happened and I guess she had to take care of it. I do have a guest that hopefully in the next couple weeks or so. She's a news reporter, a news anchor actually for a news station in like Oklahoma City, I think. And she was actually the lady that was um in the Karina Sanders video that I showed you that time. She was the lady that produced that interviewed those people. And I reached out to her and I'm hopeful that she comes on to be able to discuss that cold case even deeper because she really deep dove into that case. She did a wonderful job with her investigative series. What's Kay up to? I think Kay's working at the AT&T Stadium tonight, I believe. That's her side hustle. She works for the Cowboys at AT&T. So she has nights where she's doing that. It's hard to get good help. You know what I mean? If we're not talking Idaho, people don't want to talk about anything else. Huh. So when I get good help, we're gonna talk about other things. Um, but I have some guests lined up that hopefully, their insight will give you more thought process just about just being able to talk. Sonia's gonna be able to come around um a little more. We talked about potentially her coming on the podcast, and I had talked to another person who had her own channel who possibly haven't really made it definitive, but possibly she's going to be on the podcast as well, giving her expertise and her insight. So I have some guests lined up. Um, it just, we all have to work on our schedule because we all have different schedules. A lot of people are free in the mornings where I have my day job. I can't do the lives, during the day. So once in the evening, some people have families, some people have responsibilities in the evenings, and they can't do it in the evening. So, it's all about timing. Timing is everything. But I'm enjoying the podcast. I hope y'all are too. I really do. I hope that y'all are enjoying this concept a little different because it is more real than all that silliness. I'm not taking away anything from what I've done on this channel because I put my heart and soul in on it. It just got old really fast. You know what I mean? We should have T Rev as a guest. He just put out a new video. I've never talked to T Rev. I mean, I went to watch his channel when I first got into the true crime genre, and it seemed like the dude had a very good following. He seemed like he had good insight on the Idaho case. He seemed like he was very engaging. And then next time I watched him, he was doing some kind of spirit box chanting kind of stuff. And I was like, is this the same guy that used to sit there with his hat backwards and a wife beater, It was like he had totally just taken his show to something different. And that's the first time that I saw Detective John. And, to be honest, when I saw him on T Rev, I didn't care for him. I didn't care for John. I thought he would just, he was over the top. But when he got his own show, he kind of toned it down just a little bit. And, I'm thankful for John because that's where I was brave enough to go up on his panel twice, and he was nice enough to allow me. So I'll always be thankful for that. And once I was able to do that, then, my channel was growing at that point, or, it was inoculated into the true crime community where I probably wasn't even in the algorithm at that point. But you know, over time I just kept plugging away. And some of you noticed my channel, like PKC, she's been around a while. She's been a part of the channel for a long time. So having people that have been with you for a while, it helps a lot. But I can understand how they would get, bored of the channel because if you're around the channel all the time, then you've heard a lot of the content more than once, because people really aren't that creative. If you look at people's videos or you watch their lives, you can almost predict what they're going to say. Oh, she said, I first saw you on John's show. Okay. So that's where you saw me. All right. Yeah, because he had me up there and, I was up there with Frank and some other people. I didn't know Frank at that point. I didn't know any of the people he had up there. The only people I really kind of knew were Jeff, but Jeff wasn't on the panel that night. Um, I had known Jeff because I would watch other creators and he'd be in the chat and he got the same love back then that he gets now, you know. And I thought, who is this Jeff H guy? You know, who is this guy? Like, he goes in the chat and instantly gets all the attention. I thought to myself, man, this dude's pretty important for the whole show to just give this one guy all the attention. I mean, the moment Jeff would come in the chat, it's like everybody on the panel would acknowledge him, the chat would acknowledge him. And I thought, wonder if this dude has his own channel. Like, who is he and what is he about? You know? Then over time, I saw him on John's channel, and Jeff and I, I reached out to him, and we started talking. He started doing StreamYard, you know, with no audience. And over time, we became friends. Do I always agree with what Jeff is about? No. Do I always agree with what Jeff thinks? No. And he'll be the first to tell you. Because honestly, when we used to have our first our first kind of StreamYard conversations, um, he would irritate the hell out of me. He would irritate the hell out of me because I would say something and instantly he'd rebuttal me, and I would be like, what the hell? Why are you rebuttaling? You're supposed to be, anti defense. You sound like you're on the defense side. PKC says, wasn't that when he often had that Kelly Truth We're Always On? Yes. There was another one, I can't remember her name. I think her name was like J-Rod, J-Lord. J-Lord was her. That was the other mod. But yeah, me and Jeff and I managed to get past that level and actually become friends. And that showed that you don't always have to agree with people in order to be cordial. You know what I mean? I don't know. There's a lot of stuff in the true crime world that is changing, I guess. I see people like creating the Legion, like the Hall of Justice or the Legion of Doom and stuff like that. I mean, it's like they're all creating little cliques, like the super true crime people or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. True crime on YouTube just cracks me up sometimes because it's so outlandish. I just can't lie to myself that way. And I can't lie to my audience. Like if I sat here and lied to you, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. You're telling me that that's not really explosion that I'm looking at right now? There's no way that I could convince myself that you're right and I'm wrong. Because to me, that's what I've always seen an explosion to be. But you're questioning it doesn't change the fact that it's not an explosion. It's just your interpretation and understanding, which you resist to challenge your own belief system to actually get to a conclusion. And that's usually how investigative work works. You challenge your thoughts to reach a conclusion. If you're constantly always questioning and you never reach a conclusion, that's not investigating. That is just rehashing the obvious. But anyways, I hope some of the stuff that I do talk about on this channel does help people. I hope it, for the lack of a better word, just create some thought processes Dang, I don't know why I'm so sleepy. I guess I need to find out when the full moon is because 3 days before and 3 days after the craziness comes out. Like they say, the freak come out at night, you know? Um, but I really do hope that what I do on 12 Gauge Investigative Podcast, that it does give some people some insight. And it's not too boring and it's not too analytical. I mean, because it can get a little too deep. But I hope y'all have enjoyed tonight. And like I said earlier, try to be aware of stuff that's out there in your world. Even, because we see on these podcasts every day, people live in Arizona and they're plucked from their homes and weeks later they still don't know where that lady is. I mean, there's a lot of mysterious things that go on. People go missing every day, either by their choice or random abductions. So be mindful of your surroundings. Be mindful of your future because we never know when this might be an occurrence over here in the US. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you anything. But you might stock up on some ammunition if you are a gun owner. You might find you a bunker somewhere because you just never know. Never know. PKC said, must be getting close. Seems like the moon increases high speed chases and they're increasing. Yeah. So take care of each other and yourselves and hope to see y'all again soon. And those of you in chat, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate you guys still hanging in with me. That means a lot to me. Means a lot. Thank you so much. That's not just wordplay. I really am being sincere. Let me play an old Maestro Cusa music. Here we go. Y'all have a wonderful night. See you soon.